We can't lose this component in this big data discussion about sensors and bringing data in, about the social components of health. Health is a social enterprise. It is social in your very, what I call trusted network of your friends and family. It's social in your trying to come up with a decision with a physician that's very personal and important to you. And it's social with respect to how you're taking ownership of your health in your consumer life and in your community. And the community has a big impact in how you actually will engage in your healthcare and defining your healthcare solutions. I put this slide up. This is a study from the Pew Research Center. And the only thing I want you to focus on is the top line, which is where do people seek information? Not just patients, but their caregivers. And the caregivers are an incredibly important part of healthcare. Caregivers, unpaid caregivers, are delivering 90% of healthcare outside the clinic in the US. They're a really important part of the equation that's been overlooked. And they happen to be that friends and family network where a lot of information is being exchanged in a trusted way. So the last time you had a health issue, did you get information or care or support from who? Your family doctor, but second on that list and almost as frequently, friends and family, and then others who have the same conditions. We have to recognize that the doctor is not the only person in the equation. So one of the things we thought about when starting the company that we have is how do we learn from other big data efforts? Certainly retail has spent a lot of time. I happen to be married to someone who spent a lot of time looking at elections and politics, and we want to discuss that further. Please chat with him at dinner tonight. But essentially they spent, in the last two presidential elections in our country, spent a lot of time thinking about how do we take data and understand sentiment, and how do we understand where people are. And I want to, where we've been working to apply some of those ideas of taking data in and then providing information out in a micro-targeted way that moves people to do things, kind of like what you were talking about this morning with text messaging, but on in a different sort of what I call ecosystem that I'll explain in a minute. So we can take engaged users and a rich data set and combine and create content that's dynamic and personalized for the user in order to help them develop a better care plan. And a critical component of this, we decided at the get-go, was the family. So being able to create platforms, not a Fitbit or a solution, but a platform that allows you to incorporate multiple solutions, could be a home blood pressure monitoring to a patient education class, but with the ability to do profile management so that there is a shared interface between the patient and the patient's caregiver and the healthcare provider, and everybody is looking at the same data and working from the same page using a cloud-based architecture. So we went at this, and we've been doing work in China, doing a lot of work in the US. We're actually working on a large project with the Cleveland Clinic on brain health development that's being underwritten by Caesars Foundation. And there's a really interesting intersection between the casino world and brain health going on in Las Vegas that I'd be happy to talk to people about. But this is an example of how we've been implementing it in an underserved community to attack type 2 diabetes. This community has the highest rate in our country. 37% of people in the Rio Grande Valley in Texas are type 2 diabetics. And they are an underserved, poor community, average family income of $17,000 a year. What we've been doing is basically powering people where we have an interface that allows for profile management put in the hands of community health workers in the University of Texas so they can access data in real time on a per profile basis, push and pull content to and from the patient, and at the same time, the patient's home caregiver is getting access to that information, and they become the advocate for improving health. So now what we've essentially created is the ability to link in any of the sensors, any of the home monitoring tools, in an interface that allows for team-based management around the patient. It also gives us 360-degree data around the patient because we believe the observed data, that is the data that's coming from the home caregiver, is really important and maybe a richer source of information about patient status than the patient's experience data themselves. So I'm going to just end by talking about the value of big data. This is from a McKinsey report on big data in healthcare. But the idea is that we have to not just look at activity and claims cost data in the upper left quadrant and EMR data, and of course our clinical trials data. We have to bring in what's going on in the real world with respect to patient behavior and sentiment data. And then the integration of this is really going to be critical for coming up with the next generation healthcare solutions. And that's it.